All right, let's talk about something completely counterintuitive. We're going to dive into the fascinating and, yeah, kind of bizarre world of code golfing. This is a place where every single rule you've ever learned about writing clean, readable code, well, you just throw it right out the window. And it's all for one single purpose, making your code as short as humanly possible.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We spent our entire careers being told that good code has to be expressive, it needs comments, it needs to be easy for the next person to understand. But what if we just flip that whole idea on its head? What if the real measure of skill wasn't clarity at all, but just pure, ruthless efficiency in how many characters you use?
And that, right there, is the core idea behind code golfing. The name is actually perfect, isn't it? Just like in a game of golf, you're trying to get the lowest score possible. Except here, instead of counting strokes, you're counting every single character. Every letter, every number, every semicolon in your entire file. The lower, the better.
So you might be thinking this is some kind of new fad, right? Nope, not at all. This desire to write incredibly short code is actually a really long-standing tradition in hacker culture. Its roots go back for decades.
I mean, we're talking way back in the 1960s with languages like APL. That thing used these crazy unique symbols to pack entire programs onto just one line. That's kind of where the whole one-liner obsession began. Fast forward to 1984, and you get the legendary International Obfuscated C Code Contest, which was all about celebrating the most bizarre, unreadable code you could possibly write, as an art form. But it wasn't until 1999 that the Perl community finally put a name on it that stuck: Code Golf. Okay, so that brings us to the elephant in the room. You've got languages like Python or Perl that are designed for this kind of thing. So why on earth would anyone choose to do this in a language that's famous for being, wordy, like C or C++?
Well, this analogy just nails it. Trying to code golf in, say, Python, that's like using a sleek, modern carbon fiber driver. But C++? Oh man, that's like stepping onto the course with a heavy, old-fashioned wooden club from the 1920s. It's not just about getting a low score, it's about the sheer, raw skill it takes to even use the tool properly. It's a statement.
And really, the motivation goes way deeper than just bragging rights. First, there's the challenge of it. You're fighting against the language's natural tendency to be verbose, with all its semicolons and braces. But then there's the power. You're getting so close to the metal that you start to really understand how the compiler thinks. You're mastering the inner workings of C, a language that runs on pretty much everything. And of course, you're becoming part of this 40-year-old tradition of hackers who just love to push things to their absolute breaking point.
All right, enough talk. Let's make this real. We're going to take a super simple, everyday piece of code and watch it get completely crushed down into a tiny, golfed masterpiece.
So, the task is dead simple. Write a program that adds up all the numbers from 1 to 10 and prints the result. You've probably written this code a dozen times, but trust me, you haven't seen it done like this.
Okay, so here's level 1. This is your standard by-the-book solution. You got your hashtag include, your main function, a nice, readable for loop, all the variable declarations. It's all there. It's safe, it's clear, and it absolutely works. But look at that character count, 115. In the world of code golf, that is just ridiculously expensive. We can do so much better.
Now for level 2. The first thing we do, get rid of all that useless white space. Then, we ditch the hashtag include header. We'll see why we can do that later. And we swap out that wordy for loop for a much tighter while loop. And just like that, boom, we've cut the character count almost in half, down to 57 characters. Okay, we're definitely getting warmer. And now, the final form, level 3, hardcore golf. Look at that, a mere 35 characters. What happened? Well, we threw the loop away entirely. Instead, we're using a direct mathematical formula. N times n plus 1, all divided by 2. We're also abusing a few compiler quirks, like letting main default to an int return type. All that boilerplate? Gone. But the real secret sauce here is that little piece of magic, neg. What on earth is that? It's a classic bitwise hack. The tilde, neg-n, is a bitwise knot. In 2's complement, which is how computers store negative numbers, that's the same as negative n plus 1. So if you stick another negative sign in front of it, neg n plus 1, you get n plus 1. So why do all that? Simple. It has higher operator precedence, which means we don't need parentheses around n plus 1, and that saves us one precious character. In this game, every single character counts.
So you're probably wondering how they get away with this stuff.
The key thing to understand is that getting scores this low isn't just about being clever with code. Golfers have a whole secret toolkit of techniques, and a lot of them would get you fired if you tried them in a professional setting.
Yeah, just look at this comparison. When you compile normally, GCC is like a strict cop. It yells at you for everything, missing return types, undeclared functions, you name it. But a golfer's compiler, it's set up to be completely lawless. You use special flags to tell it, hey, just chill out, let me get away with it. No return type for main? Fine. Missing includes? Go for it. It's this willingness to turn off all the safety features that opens the door to these super short hacks.
And here are just a few more of those quick wins from the golfer's playbook. Why write if A equals 0 when you can just write if not A and save 3 characters? We already saw the negative n trick that saves 4. And an infinite loop? Forget while 1. 4 : is 2 characters shorter. These little trades seem small, but they add up incredibly fast.
There's actually a saying in the code golfing community that just perfectly captures the whole philosophy. It goes, if it's readable, you haven't golfed it enough. That says it all, right? The goal isn't clarity. The goal is pure density. You want the final code to look like it's been crushed down to its absolute minimum logical form.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. Now look, you probably shouldn't start checking golfed code into your company's repo, but the discipline behind it forces you to see your own code differently. It makes you realize that every character, every single space, every operator, it's a choice. And it forces you to ask yourself a tough question. In your own code, are you making every character count?